fellow prospective watchers, followers, commenters, all of the above, first timers. My name is Martina, and this is my lovely co host, Lyzeth. And for you all that have been keeping up with our series, we are continuing the white supremacist series that we kicked off probably a month or so ago now. We have a lot of good videos that we have posted on YouTube. So please check those out if you want to watch that before you watch this video. But today we are continuing the discussion around police brutality, but more specifically, talking about just policing and like the police state. Like, how did we get here? You know, given everything that's going on across the country, just wanted to kind of do a deeper dive into just looking at policing in America. And so Lyzeth, being the wonderful person she is, she's done a little digging for us and is going to give us a little overview of just, some of the earlier and even more of the recent history here around policing. So I kick it over to Lyzeth to kick us off.
Yeah, thanks, Martina. And this is gonna be very high level overview. I did not do a deep dive into it. I definitely just wanted, because one of the things Martina and I chatted about was just, how did this started? Like, how did we get to where we're at today? And it was just one of those things that, as you mentioned, I'm very much a person that likes to just research a little bit and get some history on things. So I went in and use Google. Google is your friend. Whenever Martina always says, Martina always says Google first and then ask me for things. So I went ahead and I found a few things. There was a lot of articles, a lot of papers, but I wanted something that was high level. So I found a few YouTube videos and some documentaries that I just kind of quickly watched and skimmed through. But one of the things that I think one of the recurring subjects that kept coming up was definitely the slave patrols, and making sure that sort of that early policing in America in the South looked at making sure that slaves didn't leave their plantations, making sure that they stayed in line, and then even after slaves were freed, you had the 13th Amendment, that said, you could be free. You're no longer a slave or things like that, unless you're incarcerated. And obviously in earlier videos, we talked about how we want to future talk about the incarceration rates, and particularly when it comes to Black and Brown individuals. So definitely a lot of that, was created around Black people, right, in the South, and making sure that Black bodies were controlled and sort of, policed, right, and doing that. And one of the interesting facts that I read was that almost all white men were required to be to serve in these patrols.
To me still, like when you told me that.
Yeah, because when I heard that, I was like, and it didn't go into details as to like who would be exempt or things like that, but like if you were a white male, you had to serve. I think it was like at least a year commitment in these patrols. And I took me a second to think about the policing system and sort of where it is now. I was like, of course, like if you are a white man, that's your history in this country. If your ancestors were here during that time and even coming in, that's the history that you have, is you were made and you were sort of socialized to think Black bodies are criminals.
Yes.
And I think that's going down. And one of the other things that it really looked at in the North primarily was policing in the sense of keeping control, like labor. So laborers, and making sure. One of the videos, and I don't remember which one it was, said it was really around keeping the poor. So the affluent individuals wanted to make sure that they could control the poor, those that lived in the slum and all those, like. And then, you think about, Martina talked about like the poor whites in this country and how sometimes they can be affected by policing. And I was like, so there's history even there when you're a poor white individual. But then obviously a lot of our poor communities are Black and brown. So there's this whole history of just policing and really upholding white supremacy in this country. White supremacy, white affluent individuals, you know, so there's this history that kind of is there. And once, at least for me, like once I saw that and sort of got a little bit more knowledge around it, it just made sense how we are today. Like, how did we get here today? How we still see this? Because I was like, yeah, a lot of the times the police go into this policing into sort of, you know, Black bodies are criminals, like Black individuals are criminals, and what you're thinking of. So that was just a little bit of history. And I was telling Martina that I went on Netflix, and if you know the show Patriot, and it had an episode, I think it was called like the Broken Police System or something like, I don't remember the name of it. But yes. And there it talked about, it gave a little bit of the history of policing and whatnot, but it really went into more training and sort of what police are being trained in. So I'll just give some really like quick points that I kind of jotted down. So if you see me, I got my little notes right here that I jotted down. And one of the things that I know we talk a bit about is de-escalation. So why aren't, you know, police officers really first attempt is to de-escalate a situation? Well, one of the things, and this was something from 2015, so I don't know if it's changed from then to now, but the hours spent training in de-escalation for police is 8 hours, and that's it.
Compared to what you're about to say.
We're about to say. So then police spent 129 hours training in weapons and fighting. So there's obviously this not balanced training, and why you never see cops de-escalating situations, because you're trained more on weapons and fighting. And one of the things that it brought up was warrior training. So this idea that if you're out in the streets, it's like a battleground out there. Someone is out to kill you. You have to be ready at all times to defend yourself, and your sole purpose is really to make it home alive. And that's the mentality. Like, that's why you rarely see cops hesitate to just shoot. Even when, because we talked about here in Chicago, Adam Toledo, who was shot as he was turning around his hands, like there was no hesitation, because cops are being trained to not hesitate. If you're constantly in this state of everyone around me as a threat, you're going to treat whether you have the opportunity to hesitate a little bit, or you have the opportunity to maybe really see the situation and assess the situation, you're not, because you're trained to just react. Like if you're triggered or whatever, you're just going to react to whatever the threat is. And it was just so fascinating to me to hear that, because it's like, I always thought it was, if you're going to be a police officer, you have to protect everyone, right? Like, that's the point. Like, you serve and protect. That's on every cop car.
Your fucking car. Yeah.
You serve and protect, right? But honestly, it's more like, no, you're just here to, maybe you're here to serve and protect, but definitely not Black and brown communities. You're here to serve and protect. I mean, white people, white supremacy, up to uphold, to protect white supremacy, whether you know it or not, because the policing system was created to uphold white supremacy. At one point it was point blank, white supremacy was the whole purpose of policing in this country. Like, we needed to make sure, you know, that doing that. So I think, so that's the history. I mean, that's a little bit, no expert here, you know, I just kind of did some research, and I'm happy to put some links to some of the videos that I found if you're interested in kind of seeing those yourself. But if there's a lot to the history of policing, that really speaks to where we are right now, and making sure that we do that. But I know, Martina and I want to dig into what I just talked about and sort of just unpack that a little bit, and really kind of talk through what it means. And one of the questions that was asked, and I think we can dig into that, Martina. One of the podcasts I saw was from NPR, and they were talking about a historian's book, and I forgot to write down the historian's name, but they shared a quote from the book, and it ended with asking, do white people in America still want the police to protect their interest over the rights and dignity and lives of Blacks, and in too many cases, brown, indigenous, and Asian populations in this country? And Martina said,
I said, yeah, they absolutely do. But this is just me being, a little woman of color here, and just thinking that I think these are conversations that need to be had. Like white people, y'all got to figure it out. I mean, us others over here, how we're normally categorized, I think we already know the answer. But white people, since you caused the problem, you got to figure out what you want. Because, and there was something else you touched on too, Lisette, when you were giving your overview about the protect and serve. And I think, I don't know where that stems from. And I think that little saying obviously means different things to different people. But I think it just going back to the whole situation with Adam's family, or Adam himself, when he, turned around with his hands up, and I'm just thinking about what you're talking about, the actual fighting training and the
it's warrior mentality.
Yeah, that warrior mentality. I was like, right then, when Adam turned around and his hands were up, why couldn't the cop just ask, like, turn around, like, let me see, or something? Like, this instant just wanted to shoot him anyway, even though the young man's hands was up. He might have, people's like, he didn't have the gun on him at that point. But if the cop was still so nervous about it, why did he, like, do you still have the gun? He could have shouted out something to him at that moment, because in that instance, like, I'm not a cop. I don't know how it feels to be one. I don't want to know how it feels to be one. But to me, I'm thinking from that standpoint, why are you still feel threatened? If you still feel so threatened, you could have been like, hey, you still have the gun, like, let me see, instead of just shooting him and killing him. But kind of going back to what you're saying, cops are not trained that way. They're not trained to be able to just de-escalate and assess the situation, although it seems like they would be, because most times when people call the cops, I don't think most of the time people are thinking that this is going to be a shootout. I think people call the cops for small shit. Like, I think, no, please don't get me wrong. There are, enormous amount of crimes that happen, which the police are a part of. But like, I guess because I've never called the police, I don't know. I'm just assuming that I think when people call the police, just like, hey, people playing their music too loud, or like, I don't know what the situation is, because I've never called the police. I don't know. But to me, it's just thinking, like, if a police officer is trained to hurt people first and not assess the situation, then, like, what is their use? This is not, World War II. It could be. I do think some sort of revolution is coming, but it's not the Civil War, or like what. So, because a lot of this just doesn't apply anymore, these sort of hard tactics, and the fact that the police officers and the trainings and whomever the powers that be are still implementing this sort of training, they are continuing to perpetuate the situation. So when people are talking about defunding the police, and people, I've seen it on different videos and comments, and people like, well, do we really want to take away cops' guns? Like, they at the end of the day still need the gun. But it's that type of mentality, because there are countries across the world that don't even have guns. And they were like, well, those countries are different than the United States. Yes.
Yeah.
They have implemented different system into play, instead of carrying guns around all the time and shooting people. So that same system here, you're saying, may not work It may not work because you continue to perpetuate that it won't work because you're still giving control to cops to protect and serve whom, I don't know. But you still have this, you're still implementing that it's okay to kill people. Of course, if the people at B and those in charge are still saying it's okay for this to happen, of course society is going to feel the same way because you're not preaching anything different. You're still saying, well, we got to protect our streets. They need guns. Well, why do they need guns? Because it's dangerous out there. Well, why is it dangerous out there? So it's like, it's just this cycle over and over again. And yeah, as we always say, change is not going to happen unless you change the system. So one officer going to jail or multiple officers going to jail, what is that really? I mean, don't get me wrong. I think it's great Derek went to jail. He should have gone to jail.
Yeah.
And all the rest of them too. Just look internally, look inward. Then you can really start changing the systems, and that way everybody can be safe, the cops and the people out here on the street. But that's not the way that people look at it. Unfortunately.
No, I think you made me think about something that always has bothered me about police in general, is this idea that they are above the law. Because even in the smallest things, like one of the things that I completely hate is when I see a cop run a stop sign just because they can. Or they think that they can. Like it's like their right to do so, when it's like, you are supposed to be the model citizen in this situation. You are supposed to make that complete stop and then go ahead. Unless there is an emergency that requires you to just blow through everything, great. But and I think it goes back to the system, right? The system allows people that go into becoming cops to think that they are above others, right? You have this supremacy thing, and it obvious to me, it comes back to like this whole white supremacy thing. Like, we are better than you, so we get to do what we want and not have to follow the same rules that you do. And they have so many protections, right? There's been protections against consequences. This is why you rarely see cops being prosecuted, because there's so many protections before you can even have consequences for it. And I was like, so if you're not even held to the same standard that everybody else in this country of making a complete stop, making sure, not running red lights. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times I've seen cops flash their lights just so that they can just run through the light, and then you just see them, drive normal because there was no emergency. Like, for the most part, like, sometimes maybe they were, and then they were called off, but for the most part, they just run their lights and run their red light and off, and then they just drive. And it's that idea that if you can't even be held to the same standards that we are to follow the rules, that you're not above the law, and then you're being trained to think that everyone's a threat. And I believe some cities, or maybe there's a city or two that have banned this like warrior training, but it doesn't mean that it's not available for cops to take on their own time. Like they're still, and even like some of the things that I watched talked about police unions and how much power police unions have, and really how much they protect cops and things like that. And a union is meant to do that, but sometimes it can get in the way of actual accountability.
A lot of unions get in the way. Accountability
and the need for real consequences, and the need to really hold people accountable. And that's like the one thing to me, like one of my biggest things that just makes me mad is when it's just like, why can't you just stop? Like, just stop at stop sign and then go like the rest of us, because you are no better than me. My taxes pay your salary. Like I mean, if we look at,
and you probably make more money than them. I know I do. Some of them. Now, I ain't talking about the detective and the sheriff and all that.
I mean, but it's the thing of like, you are no better than me. Yet they instill this fear in a lot of us. Like in our last video, we talked about how I don't want to cross paths with a cop. Never. Like, I
I'll go the
don't
other
want
way.
to be stopped. I don't. Like,
Uh-uh.
I always make sure all of my lights are working in my car. Like, I don't want to
And
risk.
then I hate when people say like, "Oh, well, if you ain't doing nothing, they ain't got no reason to buy you." See, you have never lived through anything. You've probably never had a cousin been kicked in the stomach or taken out of their house, or Lord forbid something worse. You probably have never gone through anything, Susie.
Yep.
I mean, you don't understand, and that's her reality. That's your reality, because
That's the reality.
protecting and serving you. You are absolutely right. If you're not doing anything, they're not gonna bother you.
Yeah. Because police system started off protecting white people.
White people, and they still
It
are.
was established. It was established to established to uphold white supremacy. I mean, that's
it.
That's what it was, and it continued. I mean, one of the documentaries I saw talked about, when the slaves were freed, the South came up with black codes, all these things that blacks like, and if you broke one of them, police, like, and obviously we know the history. People would make up stories, would make up things just so that black bodies would be punished. And you have this whole idea that white men had to serve in some of these patrols, and that idea that white people could punish you at any moment in time, whether they were a patrol or not. And unfortunately, there's a lot of white people who still feel that they have the right to. I mean, we saw it happen. You're out running and someone just take it on their hands to go after you because they thought you didn't belong in the neighborhood. And it's like, white people continue to uphold these things that were historically for them. And it doesn't matter because it's so ingrained in the fabric of who they are that it's scary when you think about it.
And that's why, as a society here in the United States, we are not going to get anywhere. People like, well, police officers need to be carrying guns. Well, yeah, with your type of attitude, then yeah, they will continue to carry guns and continue to brutalize other people for no reason at all, or for little to nothing, and shoot people for just what they think they might have. Like, to me, I think that's so bizarre. And the fact that you were telling me before we started shooting about, like, you can't sue cops, or at least I don't know if that's if that's a state regulated or if that's federally regulated, not sure. But to me, that's so ridiculous. For what? Why can't I sue a cop? He or she or they are not better than me. They can sue me, but I can't sue them. For what?
Yeah, there was something about how they're sort of like, what were they saying? Like, it had to be like established that a cop had already been successfully sued before you can like.
But if you can't sue them, how they going?
Exactly. So there's never that precedence around it that you can't. So it never happens. I don't know if that's changed, because when I saw, I think this episode was from like 2019, which I don't think it's changed from 2019 to today.
Probably
like that's not. We're not talking about like this episode came out 20 years ago or something.
Right. This is
2 years ago, and it's just, to me, they equated. I was trying to figure out what the equation was, like, how you graduate college, and if you've never had a job, when you're interviewing, they're like, well, you need experience, but you're like, well, I need the job so that I can get experience. The same thing with like suing, like, well, we need something to happen so that we can have that there and established, but no, for the most part, people aren't, and it's just fascinating to me that there are people out here who really just believe everything that they believe the cops or the system that is policing it's for everyone, that it's just some bad apples, as we hear all the time. But it's like, well, no, because it's the system. The bad apple is the system. Like, it's all of it. Like, it's
the whole tree got to go.
The whole tree has to go, and you have to plant a whole new one.
You got to plant a whole field.
A whole field of new ones.
The soil was bad.
And you need to have different voices help be planting and watering and all these, like, there's all these things that need to happen, and the same could be said of a lot of systems in this country that need that same approach.
Systems that get paid way more than police officers need to be changed. Okay. Okay. A lot needs to be changed.
Yes. But it's just, to me, it goes back to the idea of you need to be held accountable, right? And we with Derek Chauvin, people were like, okay, that's one step toward accountability. But the fact is, you can't be held accountable under the current system. You can't be fully held accountable because not everyone is recording every single cop out here. There's and even with body cams, cops can cover their body cams.
They can turn it off.
They turn it off. It's malfunctioning and all these things, and
it's not being held accountable for it, so they can turn it off and say, "Oh, I lost it." It doesn't work.
And the thing that sucks is that cops might be able to see these videos before they get into public, right? So they're able to make up their stories if they wanted to. We've seen it. They sort of, before videos were really out there, cops would make up, would collude and cahoot and be like, okay, we need to just figure out get our story right and make sure that we look like we were in the right and they were in the wrong. And that's historical, right? Like, hey, we're going to make up a story. We're going to make up our own sort of narrative, and that'll be the truth because we're cops and we're always right. We're always in the right, and we have the full power of our unions, even our government, even our politicians. They're going to protect us, and we see it. I mean, we see it here in Chicago. How much money went into the police department that came in from COVID-19 support for the city? What? And it's like, oh, it went to the police department. It's like, again,
won't any effect. We won't see any changes. It's just be like millions of dollars wasted. You might as well throw that at like a stripper, and you would have gotten money, and you would have got a better time. You would have got a hell of a better time. You throwing it at, we ain't gonna see no results. If anything, we'll just see worse results than what we have. Ain't nothing. It's nothing. And in fact, to me, it's just like, I kind of lost my train of thought with that, so I'm gonna let you go back. I'm gonna come back.
You threw me off, Martina.
I got heated talking about the stripper. I'm just saying, and I have mad respect for strippers. That's no shade at all. I have mad respect. Do your thing. That's what I'm saying. Yes,
but I think, no, it goes back right to the what I was saying around. Even if we talk about, like, you can throw money into a lot of problems. You can throw money into a lot of different areas, but if the system is only working to uphold, in this instant, white supremacy, that doesn't matter how much money you throw into the police system,
because you're not changing the root cause.
Because it goes back to what you and I have said before, like, the system isn't broken, it's working the way it's supposed to be. And we hear a lot of experts say that, like, nothing's really broken, it's working the way it is. I was like, but you need to sort of, like, again, you have to dismantle that. If a house is completely just in shambles and the foundation is just crumbling and there's no saving a home, you got to demolish that whole thing and start from the ground up again. And it's the same thing here. Like, it doesn't, you can throw money in there and you can say, well, we're gonna do this new training, we're gonna do this new thing, but you're just adding a training, you're not taking anything away, you're just adding something. But I'm like, no, you need to just defund that whole, defund, demolish, abolish, whatever you want to call it.
Whatever the fuck they want to call it. Whatever the fuck you got to call it to make yourself feel better. Whatever. But I'm like,
you need to start from the ground up again.
Yeah, they need to start. And the thing is, it's like, we're never going to get anywhere. Because again, you expecting, and well, I don't know who is. Maybe it's us Black and brown people. We keep expecting something new. But ain't nothing changed because it's all still the same. Like I said, it's working. It's working for the white people. It's supposed to, because there are poor white brothers and sisters out there too who are treated like shit as well. So we don't want
Yep.
to discard them because the system ain't working for them either. But if you're
Uh-uh.
fluent and wealthy white, it's working exactly the way it's supposed
You're
to.
being served and protected.
Yes, you are. You got Susie. So that's why for you, when you see a cop, of course, if you're minding your own business, they're gonna leave
That's
you.
why you're not afraid to flag
You're
down
not
a cop.
afraid. And you're not afraid to call them. You're not afraid at all.
We had an incident where there was my brother triggered our alarm here at the house and got it fixed. But the company called and said like, hey, is everything okay? Do you need cops? And he said no, like what's going on? I'm like, everything's fine. Whatever. Shut everything down and I went back to sleep because I was like 20 minutes later, like they're knocking on our door, the flashlight's going, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the cops. I paused.
It's scary, I bet it's so scary.
I paused and I'm like,
so scary.
I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I'm like, you gotta open because they're gonna I don't know. So I like went in and they were nice. They were like, they're like, we saw that as an alert from this home and we just wanted to stop by and make sure that you were okay. And I was like, thank you. But my heart was
you were terrified because you ain't know. You don't know.
I was like, I don't know what, and it was this thought of like, and it came to my head, like, imagine if the cops had come with my brother out there, like, it would have been a completely different situation. They would have thought my brother was trying to get in here, like, and they may not have hesitated, like, and it's that thought because my mom told me that, like I really, they had come when your brother was out there because my brother had to come in and get like his boots for work or something, and
it's the whole thing.
So I'm like
the whole thing.
But it was just the most scariest thing. But if I imagine if I had been white, I probably wouldn't have had that reaction to the cops.
No,
because I would have been like, oh, they're just here to check in on me or something, like they're just doing their job. I'm over here thinking, oh Lord, just don't let them be like,
don't let them shoot. Don't shoot anybody. We are in our home on our property. I don't know what's going on.
And like I open the door like very little, like we have the door and then there's screen door. So that screen door, I just kind of open it a little bit. So I was like, I know my rights. You can't come in here.
This is terrifying.
But it was one of the moments where I was like, I never want to go through that again. Like when I say I want to avoid the police, like I
avoid like the plague, honey, girl. And the thing is, people act like, we're just, the United States is a mess, honey. We are just, we've been a mess for a long time. And it's quite embarrassing to our friends abroad, but it's really a mess here. And the thing is like, I just don't understand, like, people make this whole thing about changing this law or that law a big thing. Well, what else are we going to do? Yeah. If you don't change, like laws are written down. We can change them. They don't have to stay the same, honey. That's what, modern people do. As you grow, you need to reevaluate laws and regulations and procedures for that reason. And the United States is like, whomever, from Biden on down, from the bottom to the top, they just act like they can't change laws. So, oh, well, this person's going to get mad. Well, sometimes, you know what? People may just have to get mad. They might just have to get, because like, I always say, I'm waiting for the revolution over here. Now, am I going to be actively a part of the revolution? I don't know.
Another thing to be seen.
Yes. Now I might be out there like recording for like perspectives. We can
right.
Record, like
we'll have like our mics or little mics.
Our mics out there recording, but I'm just like, something's gonna have to change. They act like it can't change, and like, well, this or that. Fuck all that, because if we keep going back and forth about this about that, y'all just pussyfooting around and just trying to delay the process. We are never going to get anywhere. Something has to change. And this little change in one little thing here and one thing there. Okay.
And it goes back to obviously the representation that we have in our government, or lack of representation of people of color in our government, and those that are
a lot of them are whitewashed too. We have a number of whitewashed people who are people of color, and they're operating in a white supremacist system.
I know, and we're gonna get there. Like, we will hopefully in future episodes we'll get there. But I think about a lot of Republicans, for the most part, is Republicans who want to continue upholding white supremacist culture and ideals, and this this fear that they have of, like, what's going to happen. You've mentioned it, like, what are you afraid of? Like, what are you afraid of if more people of color come into positions of power? Like I've heard people say, like, you are lucky that people of color aren't looking for revenge. We just want to have the same rights. Like, we just want equity. We just want to be treated the same way as as everybody else.
Some white people have to suffer for that. Well, then that's the way it is, because our people continue to suffer.
And it's like, but it's definitely something that continues. I mean, the more we have people that operate in white supremacy, because this is the thing, and this is something that I think I shared with you, Martina, was I'm not calling all white people white supremacists. Like, I'm not calling you that. What I am saying is that you operate within systems and environments that uphold white supremacy or white supremacist ideals and culture. We all do.
Yeah,
Martina and I operate professionally and personally in white supremacy. Like, we all have that. Like, we all operate within it. So if we don't dismantle white supremacy, which Martina and I always say is the root cause of everything, then we can't tackle racism. We can't tackle pay gaps with like racial, like all these things. We can't tackle it until we tackle the root cause, which, as we have seen and continue to see, is this idea that white is better. And it's like, until then, our police systems, our government.
That's why I'm tired of these one-offs here, this one-off there. Like, Lord, okay, we just gonna have one-offs for I guess the rest of eternity.
We've been having one-offs.
And they just expect that to work, I wrote a bill back in 2042, and okay, well,
it's sort of like, well, let's just please this section of people for a little bit. Let's just pass this one little thing, and and we'll wait a few years until we tackle anything. Let's just put band-aids into things.
Band-aids. And the fact is that to me, it's shitty at the same time that we gotta write bills to give people equity and equality. Like,
right.
That's just not even. I remember, I think it was Obama that wrote the bill about immigration. It's like, so we got to have bills to give people their rights that are theirs. Like, it's just, to me, it's so crazy, because it's like, from immigrants to trans to Black and brown folks and Native to anybody that's different. Anybody
that isn't white.
That's not white. You gotta make laws for this shit. And it's like, and it's what needs to be done, but it's also fucked up at the same time that people can't just live their lives.
That you can't view people as human beings.
You can't just view somebody as human being. And the fact that here in the United States, people worry about other people's business all the time. You're worried about everybody. I personally don't have time to worry about your business and mine too. It's too much, because I got too much going on. But honey, white people, they just be worrying about everybody. Well, what about the sanctity of marriage? Well, what about our kids? Well, what about this? And what about that? Well, how about you mind your business and you ain't got to worry about any of that? You just stay in your lane and they'll stay in their lane, because that's what most people who are different or considered others want. They ain't trying to revolutionize much. They just trying to live their lives.
Yeah.
And they can't do that.
I mean, this is a whole other conversation we can have, because we can look even at particularly what's considered Western countries that go into what people consider third world countries and try to sort of help them or whatever, support, I mean, there's a whole history. When you think about Central and South America and how much the United States has sort of intervened or made themselves part of their history and trying to dismantle or whatever, or in some cases support some dictators, and and it's like the idea that a lot of Western countries, a lot of white men, have caused other countries to just collapsed because they weren't minding their own business, and they were concerned that, you know, they just wanted to pillage these countries for all that they have, because, you know, that's what colonizers do. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's that fake facade that they like care about. We care about society, you know. They don't give. It's that fake facade, that old like white man's burden type of shit. Did anybody tell you go worry about everybody's business, Bob? Don't worry about people's business. Worry about your own business. Don't worry about what's going on in a country that ain't got nothing to do with you. And the thing is, with like people, you know, particularly India right now. Now, what America needs to be doing is trying to figure out how they can help that country.
yes,
That's what they need to be doing, and stop trying to get in countries' business. So when America needs to intervene and really help the citizens of another country, they don't do it. But when they want to take their oil or Lord else, or make some sort of international agreement for something, oh honey, they all
we need to collaborate. We need
okay, we need, you know, or to put this dictator in power so they can have more access to resources in another country. America is all for it. But when they need to help countries in need, they do
they go off screen.
That's exactly it.
Turn off the camera, go on mute.
They gone because they don't generally care. America's, and that's the thing too, like going back to the vaccine, we've been talking about people's like, oh, America's pushing out the vaccine #1 across the world. Yes, because they like, we don't give a shit about the people who live here. We give a shit about this economy. Okay, we don't give a shit.
We need people to go back to work.
We need to go back to work. Okay,
we need to uphold this capitalism.
We need everybody back to work. We need kids in school. We need people in offices, so we can continue to support capitalism.
And it doesn't matter the cost.
Doesn't matter the cost of human life. Human life, what? We don't give a shit about our citizens. We just want to make money.
Because the affluent white people in this country aren't affected by this pandemic.
They're not.
They're out there enjoying their lives.
Yeah.
You know, while the rest of us have to deal with the fallout.
Deal with it. So that's why America's pushing out the vaccine more than any other country, because they just care about money. That's it. That's the only reason. They don't give a shit about us. They never will. But that's the way that the whites have set it up. So it's working according to their plan. It's working.
I mean, and to sort of maybe close out sort of this episode, and sort of like, you know, when we talk about what we started with, the policing system in this country, you know, it's like you said, it's working the way it's supposed to be. And until people are willing to really call it out what it is and what it's upholding and white supremacy, you know, we're going to continue having these conversations of, you know, well, we just need to retrain, or we just need to, you know, put in some more money, or, you know, things like that, or we need to bring in social workers and like behavioral. And I'm like,
oh, yes.
I was like, we don't need to do that. Like, I think it's great that we definitely need more mental health resources. We need all of that. We need trained professionals, but don't bring them into this environment as it is right now, because it's not going to work. You know, the way that the police system is right now, if you were to bring in, you know, whether it's therapists or people that are trained to de-escalate, like, it's not going to work, because the system is not set up for it to really support that to be successful. Like,
and they've tried to do that. They've tried to bring in social work experts, and like, they need to get training. Yes, that mental health training should be a part of the curriculum. Yes. Once you tear it down, that needs to be a part of this brand new curriculum. But you're trying to bring them in once that system ain't set up for them to care about humans like that. So they're not going to.
What I would love to see is a group of diverse thought leaders and community individuals come together and form what this new police system should be, should look like, what it should be, what it should have, how it should operate, all of this. Because you gotta do the work. You can't just dismantle and not have anything in place that's gonna replace it. So how, like, we need to do that in tandem. You gotta create that plan and what that's gonna look like, and make sure you have as many different voices around that table that are gonna inform this.
Mm-hmm.
While then you can, once you have that and you've done it, you can start dismantling the system. And then you could put this new sort of thing, and you start with like one city, see how it goes. Like, I know you can't do it across the board. It'd be crazy for me to say dismantle all police things and at the same time, because
they can't do that because of the system that they've created. It would be anarchy. Probably.
And I was like, yeah, it would be. And I was like, but if you can start in one city and start there, and then see how it, like again, you gotta pilot it. Like, I don't know if it's gonna work. Like, that's the only way we're gonna know. But if nobody starts it and nobody does it,
yeah, because we can keep talking about defunding the fucking police for 20 more years, and that's what it's looking like, because ain't nothing happening. So
yeah, and I'm like, but the minute if you can proactively have people creating this plan, this sort of like, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to execute, this was going to be training, this is where the money's going to be coming from, this is what we're going to allocate, blah, 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 all of those things that come into that planning process. And then you have that execution and implementation, and you're tearing things down and you're retraining, and you're going to lose cops. There's going to be cops that aren't going to want to be. Yeah, and it's okay. They shouldn't be in this.
They shouldn't be in it. Don't worry about it.
If they don't want change, then they're part of the problem, and they shouldn't be part of it.
They shouldn't be part of it. Yeah. And people need to start acting. Don't get me wrong. I know this is easier said than done. Everything that is worth having is that way. But don't act like it can't be done. Don't just act like, I don't know what to do, where to start. You got experts in almost every fucking field we could imagine.
Every field.
Okay? It's not, yes, it's hard, but don't act like it's that damn hard. Because when the government and the police officers, or whomever these powers that be, when they want something done, they get it done. So don't say it can't be done. And don't say how hard it is, because it's just as hard as anything else. So that's not a fucking excuse. Just put on your fucking thinking caps, get these experts in the room, figure this shit out. And if that's not the way you want to go about it, then figure something else out. But you got to start somewhere. Don't keep bitching about it. Well, we're saying, it's never going to work.
Yeah.
You keep that up. No.
Yeah. I mean, there's people trying to get accountability offices. Like, no, I don't need accountability offices in any local city government. I need people to come in, make a plan of what this new police system will look like, and what those new trainings.
Yes.
And you got to figure out how you're going to work with these unions, right? And like,
unions are a big part of it. So it's
like you have to, but like you've said before, change is going to come one way or another, and it can either be done in a collaborative sort of environment, or we're just gonna, or people are gonna take it into their own hands and figure it out.
Yeah.
And I'm really I'm the optimist. I'm like, I really would love to see the collaborative part of things and see how that goes, but I don't know if it'll be a possibility if there aren't people willing to just jump in and do the work.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm a mix of optimist and a realist. So I keep it real. I'm the person I got to see to believe, honey. So I just they just need to, you got to start somewhere, because when they wanted to colonize other countries, you figure that out. Okay. You figured it out. So figure out what you're going to do about this. And I think that's a great way for us to wrap up this episode.
Yes. I know there's a lot more to unpack, and we definitely hope to do so in the future. We definitely want to bring some experts for them to give their perspectives on what needs to be. I'd love to ask them, like, what would a new police system look like in this country? I think that's a question that I'll be curious to kind of hear some responses. I really haven't heard anybody say anything around that.
Right.
All I've heard is defund the police, abolish the police, but nobody ever says what does
What does that mean? Like,
what does that mean, or what is it going to look like? I've heard people say community policing. What's community policing? Because community policing is different for everybody, and you
can't have grandma and grandpa out there trying to.
you gotta standardize this. There's things. Some things can't be standardized. This is one of those things that really is standardized across the country, the policing system. And I don't think you get rid of it completely, but you definitely need to change it. But if y'all have any thoughts, or please share them with us. Any questions, like I said, this is something that we'll continue exploring in future episodes, and then seeing what others have to say. And as we kind of get more we develop our perspective a little bit more, in other aspects, definitely are wanting to hear from you, and hear your perspective and what you think about this police system and what it means, whether you agree with us or not. You can disagree. We just ask for you to be kind and respectful. If you're going to comment, if you're going to disagree, because we definitely are all about having a dialogue around this.
Well, I echo everything Lyzeth says. So thank you all again for tuning in. Remember, we are now on Spotify and iTunes as well. So you can now listen to our great voices as you're, driving in the car, having a relaxing evening. I don't know if you want to hear me yell like, but hey, some people, each their own. But thank you again for watching. Please comment, like, communicate with us. We are open, open to hearing your suggestions, feedback, or it doesn't have to be all y'all are great. It can be some rebuttal in there, but just keep it nice. So until next time, we are out, and talk to you later, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.